So we'll be looking at bone tissues and skeletal system, and I want you to pay very close attention um, as we study. Now, what are the general functions of your skeletal muscles or your skeletal system rather? It does support. That is what gives you the framework of your system. It what supports your body to be able to stand, to maintain posture. It also protects organs. Now, you know that there are organs inside cavity, which we call visceral organs. All right, those visceral organs. So visceral organs are protected by bones, right? The visceral organs like your heart, your lungs, your brain, all of those organs inside bony cavity, your reproductive organs, they are visceral organs. All right. Now, movement without your skeletal system, you cannot move. You move with the contribution of three structures: your muscles, your joints, and the bones. Now, mineral storage. Now, about 39% of the minerals in your body is calcium, and about 99% of this calcium is stored in the bone, right? So your bone is very important for mineral storage, for homeostasis, maintenance of minerals in your system. Now, blood formation. Now, inside the bone is what we call red bone marrow. This red bone marrow is present in developing bones. And the purpose of the red bone marrow is to make blood cells. So it makes your blood cells, the red blood cell, the white blood cell, the platelet, that are produced by the red bone marrow, which is inside the medullary cavity. I'm going to point to that later. Now, as we age, as we grow old, and our bone is no longer increasing in height, we are no longer increasing in height, what's going to happen? The red bone marrow is going to be replaced gradually by um, yellow bone marrow, which is going to be for fat storage. All right. So yellow bone marrow stores fat, red bone marrow makes blood. Now, what are the components of bone, of skeletal system? You have the bone tissues there, the osseous, we have the cartilage, chondrocyte, chondroblast we'll be talking about. You have the dense connective tissue, adipose tissue, blood and vascular connective tissues, then the nervous tissues. Let's go. Now, what are the bone shapes that we have? We have the short bones, which obviously they are short. All right. The bones around your wrist, they are short bones. The bones that makes your wrist, which we call the carpal bones. You see, these bones are short. They are quite short. You see them? All these bones, they are short bones. All right. Then we have, so the bone around your wrist, we call them carpal bones. The bone around your knee here, I mean your ankle, we call them tarsal bones. All right. Then we have flat bones. The flat bones are the bones of the skull. You see that? These bones here, they are flat bone. Parietal bone is a flat bone. You see, that's parietal bone here. That's parietal bone here. So they are flat bone. That's what you're seeing here. All right. Hip bone, this is flat bone. This is ilium, and it's a flat bone. Then you see your ribs here. They are flat bones. All these bones, they are flat. They are not circular. They are not round. They are flat, actually. Now, we have long bones. Long bones are, you see, this bone is long, is humerus. This is radius and ulnar. They are long bone. This is femur. It's long. This is tibia, fibula. They are long bones. All right. So those bones are long bones. Now, you have irregularly shaped bones. Now, irregularly shaped bones simply means we can't tell what the shape of the bone is. We can't really place them. We can't say they are long, we can't say they are short. They're irregularly shaped. And obviously, if you look at this bone, you can tell that this bone is irregularly shaped. And that is the vertebral bone. That's the bone that hosts your spinal cord. We have this cervical vertebra, we have the thoracic vertebra, we have the lumbar vertebra, we have the sacrum and the coccyx, which we're going to talk about later. Then we have the sesamoid bone. Sesamoid bone is simply the bone that you call your kneecap, and that is patella. It's actually called patella, but we call it common name, which is kneecap. The last one are the sutural bones. Now, when you see this, here, this is parietal, this is parietal. So we have two parietal bones. They have to be sutured together. Sutured or sutured means sewing, joining them together. Now, that's the same thing they do when you have big cut and they need to suture the place, they need to tie it together. All right. Now, there are some point, like the suture between the two parietal bone, we call it sagittal suture. And that is great because it is smooth, it's well connected. All right. But this case here, this is parietal bone and this is occipital bone. If you look at between the occipital bone here, this suture is called lambdoid suture. But you see here, there is a point here that there's going to be gap here. To prevent this gap here, there's a bone that helps to support, to fill up the gap, and that is called sutural bone. All right. So those are the bone types that we have in our body generally. Now, bone markings simply means boundaries that helps with naming of bones or naming of structures. All right. And if you look at it, when you think about the gluteal region now, the gluteal region, which is the butt, right? The bone, the blood vessel, I mean, the muscle there, we call it gluteus maximus, gluteus minimus, gluteus medius. Just saying that they are around that gluteus. When you see femur, the artery there, we call it femoral artery, femoral vein. All right. Here we call it brachium. We say brachial artery, brachial vein. All right. We say brachialis. All right. The muscles there. So bone markings helps to it's simply boundaries that helps to name regions in the body. And so these are the bone markings as well, right? We have processes here. These are projections or elevations, so we call it process. So you say mandibular process, all right? We say cricoid process. So we'll be talking about all of that later. Let's go. Now, when you see a bone, you see when you're looking like a bone structure like this, like a long bone, this is femur, right? Now, when you pick the femur on the edges of the femur, and think about this as drumstick now, so that you can picture it as I'm talking about it. On the edges of the drumstick, when you hit your chicken, you can take the drumstick and you can still break the edges. This part is crunchy. We call it the epiphysis. The reason it's crunchy is because the type of bone that is made up is called spongy bones. All right. Then you have the metaphysis here. Then you have the diaphysis here. This diaphysis, it is inside the diaphysis that you have the medullary cavity. All right. You have the medullary cavity here, and it is made up of compact bone. It is hard. And so if you think of your drumstick, you know that there's this edge that you can break because it's made up of crunchy bones. It's crunchy because it's made up of spongy bone. It's called spongy bone or cancellous bone. All right, cancellous. Right, so it's spongy bone or cancellous bone. Now, but the compact bone is made up of, I mean, the epiphysis is the diaphysis is made up of compact bone, and it's also called a shaft. Right now, then I told you about the medullary cavity, which is where you have the bone marrow. So, as we are growing, it's made up of red bone marrow, and as we at adulthood, it changes to yellow bone marrow, which stores fat. All right, let's go. Now, when you're looking at a bone from exterior inward, let's say we do a cross-sectional cut of the bone. On the outside of the bone, you are going to see the out. And in biology, peri means out, endo means inside. So periosteum means that the outside layer of the bone. So it's a dense connective tissue membrane that covers the outer surface of the bone. You see that? The purpose of it is for attachment of muscles to help with growth and repair. And then you have the endosteum, which is the inside. So this is the periosteum, and this is the endosteum. And inside here, is the medullary cavity. Here's the medullary cavity. Okay, I'll be talking about that to details as we go. Now, bones are made up of cells. So I'll be discussing the cells that makes up the bone and what is called the extracellular matrix. Now, there are 4 types of cells that are in the bone. 4 types of cells. The predominant cells, we have number 1, osteoprogenitor cells or osteogenic cells. All right, so it's the same, osteoprogenitor cells or osteogenic. Number 2, we have the osteoblast, which we call immature bone cells. We have the osteocyte, which are the mature bone cells. And we have number 4, the osteoclast. Now, watch this with me. I'll say 0 leads to 1. 1 leads to 2. And 2 leads to 3. Now, you want to ask me which one is 0. 0 are the cells that I call mesenchymal cells. So I'm going to type it here. Zeros are mesenchymal cells. They are mesenchymal cells. In the mesoderm. All right. So these cells, mesenchymal cells, originate from the mesoderm, and they are going to give rise to the osteoprogenitor cells or the osteogenic cells. Now, so they give rise to the osteoprogenitor cells or osteogenic cells. All right. Now, once they give rise to the osteoprogenitor cells, osteogenic cells, then the osteogenic cells are stem cells. They are also going to actively divide. Then they give rise, they differentiate, just like you have nurses, bedside nurses, deciding to go take their masters and become nurse practitioners, one in gerontology, in anesthesia, family medicine. Now they are different from each other because they specialize. So when we say cell differentiate, it means the cell is specializing. All right. Now, so the osteoprogenitor cell is going to differentiate and form what we call osteoblast. Now, osteoblasts, they are immature blood cells, but what do? They are the ones that secrete the matrix. You know, I told you earlier that bone is made up of cells and bone matrix, extracellular matrix. Now, the matrix is collagen fibers and calcium. Calcium salt is what makes your bone to become hard and hard. Now, collagen fiber is what makes the bone to become resilient. Now, so when a bone lacks calcium, it is brittle. It is bendable. But when calcium fills a bone, it becomes hard. All right. Now, so osteoblast, I joke with the name osteoblast, I call it osteobuild. All right. Now, osteobuild or osteoblast is an immature bone cells. It's going to differentiate again and produce osteocyte. Osteocyte is a mature bone cell. And this cell is the one that helps to maintain the bone matrix. All right. So as you recall, mesenchymal cells give rise to osteoprogenitor cells. Osteoprogenitor cells give rise to osteoblasts, and osteoblasts produce osteocyte. Whereas osteoblast is the one that build the matrix, osteocyte maintain the matrix. So what cleans the matrix? Now that is the job of osteoclast. And I joke with it, I call it osteoclare because of the C. Because that's what it does. It cleans the matrix. But where is it from? Because it's not from the mesenchymal cells, right? Osteoclast originates from immune cells, which is the monocyte, is one of the white blood cells. So osteoclast originates from the monocyte. All right, you can see that there. Now, so because of that, it has immune function. It fights infections and also helps to break down bone tissue. So it helps to reabsorb the matrix. Does that make sense? Now, so think about this. If by any chance your blood calcium level is low, which of these cells do you think will work? It will be osteoclast. Because osteoclast is going to break down the matrix, break down the calcium salt, break down the collagen fiber so that it can release calcium into the bloodstream. Now, on the other hand, if your blood calcium level is high, what do we need to happen? We will need osteoclast activity, osteoblast. We need to increase its activity so that it can capture some calcium from the blood to build the matrix and build a strong matrix, a new matrix. All right. So if you need to understand the function of each of them because it helps to tell about bone remodeling, all of that, which we are going to be studying later. Let's go. Now, extracellular matrix, we talk about that. It's collagen fiber and salt. All right. The collagen fiber is for flexibility. The calcium salt is for strength. All right. Now, so we talked about the function, each of them, we talked about the osteocyte, the osteoclast, the osteoblast, and the osteoprogenitor. And I told you that what the osteoclast is the one that does the cleaning job. So it helps to clear. All right. It does a cleaning job, clean. All right. It removes the matrix. It's just like you want to do your oil change. Osteoclast is the one that removes the old oil. Then osteoblast, we build the new oil. We put the new oil there. Then osteocyte does maintenance, maintain. Right? Then osteoprogenitor cell is the precursor that give rise to osteoblast. And then osteoblast give rise to osteocyte. This guy comes from monocyte, the immune cells. All right, let's go. So everything I'll be talking about over time is going to be to discuss the function of each of them. That's what we'll be relating, how each of them helps with each of the function that they do. Now, if you look at this, now there are two types of bone tissue. Like I said earlier, we have the spongy bone and we have the compact bone. Now, the spongy bone is a bone that you have on the epiphysis area. The compact bone is what you see on the diaphysis. Now, so if you go back to think about the slide I showed you earlier, you see that the shaft is longer. So the shaft makes up about 80% of the bone, and then the spongy bone makes up about 20%. All right? So 80% of bone makes up the diaphysis. You see that? So that means here is going to be compact bone, right? Compact bone is here. It supports the movement and weight of the body. It's characterized by its dense arrangement. Let's go. I'll look at that. Now, this is where we are getting to. What is a compact bone? This is what we call a compact bone. And the functional unit of a compact bone is what we call osteon. Right? Now, think about this as the functional unit of a cell, of a living thing, is cell. The functional unit of a bone is osteon. Of a compact bone is osteon. Now, so here is an osteon. The osteon is also called Avesian system. So osteon can also be called Avesian system. I'm going to write this here. Avesian system. So when you see Avesian system, it's the same thing as osteon. Now, inside the osteon, just the same way you have cells, and you say that inside a cell, you say that the cell has a nucleus. Inside the osteon, there is something we call Avesian canal or central canal. So this is also called Avesian canal. So osteon, I'll do this here. Osteon has central canal, which is the same as Avesian. Now, all right, this is the same as Avesian canal. Now, but what do we have inside the osteon? Inside the osteon, we have, inside the Avesian canal or the central canal, we have blood vessels there. So we have blood vessels there. We have blood vessels. We have some arteries. We have some vein and nerves right there. All right. So there are blood vessels there and there are nerves right inside the space. And this is what you have here. This is an osteon. See, this is an osteon or Avesian system. This is Avesian canal or central canal. And you can see these are blood vessels. Blood vessel will be inside this place, and nerves will be inside there. Now, please look at something with me very clearly. Again, I told you that osteoblast helps to build the matrix. Osteoclast helps to clean the matrix, remove the old calcium salt, old collagen fibers from there. Now, and I told you that osteocyte helps to maintain the matrix. Now, here are the osteocytes in this osteon. You see, osteocytes are here, but they are not there by themselves. They are inside a covering. And I think about this just the same way you have some peanuts inside the peanut shell. All right. So here you have the osteocyte inside the lacuna. We call it lacuna. All right. So we call it osteocyte. Okay, it's right here. Osteocyte inside the lacuna or lacunae. Some people call it lacunae. All right. Yes, osteocyte inside lacunae. And it's like you have your peanut inside the peanut shell. All right. Now, but look at this. If this is the central canal, which consists of blood vessels and nerves, then there has to be a connection between the central canal and the osteocyte so that they can communicate together, get nutrient to the osteocyte. So that connection is done by what we call canaliculi. So if you look at this, every osteocyte, let me clean this. Every of the osteocytes, they are connected to the central canal. So if you look at this is this osteocyte now. You see, it's connected like with a fiber. And think about this as canal, a tube. Okay, so each osteocyte is connected by a canal, to the central canal. And that canal is called canaliculi. All right, good. So that nutrient can be circulated appropriately, right? Now, the other thing I want to show you here is the lamella. Now, what is the lamella? The lamella is simply, now, if you look at this is the central canal here. What do you notice here? You will notice here, let me use another color now. You will notice here that there is another ring here spreading around the canal. You see another ring here spreading around the canal. You see another ring here spreading around the canal. Each ring that circles around the canal is what we call lamella. That is what we call lamella. Each ring around the canal is what we call lamella. Let's go. Now, what we just looked at is in compact bone. Now we want to look at spongy bone. Now, everything we just look at in compact bone is the same thing, just like it is in compact bone. And I'll tell you the difference or how to link it. Now, when you look at compact spongy bone is made up of network of plates, which we call trabecular. Now, in compact bone, we don't talk about central canal. We talk about trabecular. All right. Now, so look at it. So trabecular are a network of concentric rings called lamina are made up of concentric rings called lamina. Scattered between the lamella are the lacunae, all right? Just the same way we talk about lacunae containing the osteocytes. Canaliculi again connect the lacuna to the surface of the trabecular. Now, that is what I'm showing you. So in compact bone, we say canaliculi connect the lacuna to the central canal. But here we say canaliculi connect the lacuna to the trabecular. So that's why I told you to look at it as, link it as though central canal, right? In compact bone. Now, between the trabecular are spaces that gives a spongy bone appearance, the spongy appearance, and that contain red bone marrow, just the same way central canal consists of blood vessels and the nerves, the same way this guy also contain red bone marrow, which are involved in homopoiesis. Homopoiesis is blood formation, you see, blood vessels and nerves. All right. So if you understand this, just apply the same understanding here. Just replace trabecular with central canal. That's all. All right. So blood supply to the spongy bone. Major thing you want to take note here is to take note of the nutrient foramen, the nutrient artery. Just take note of that. So I have to go. Now, ossification simply means blood formation. Ossification means blood formation. Ossification is the same thing as formation of bone formation. Now, ossification begins, bone formation begins in the fetus. Before a child is born, there's bone, all right? And look at it. It begins in the fetus with mesenchymal cells. You see that mesenchymal tissues from the mesoderm, which is the one that produces the osteoprogenitor cells or the progenitor cells. They will undergo transformation to form what we call bones. Now, there are two types of ossification. Ossification can be intramembranous or it can be endochondrial. Now, let me give you a trick. Endochondria already tells you that this is inside, and chondria tells you it's cartilage. Anywhere you see con, it means cartilage. So it means it's a kind of ossification that begins inside and it involves a cartilage. This does not involve a cartilage because it just involves deposition of the tissue within the mesenchymal membranes. Again, you see, these involve the replacement of hyaline cartilage mode with osseous bone. All right? Now, I'm going to continue from here. I have a class now. I'm going to teach, then I'll continue from here to complete this chapter. Thank you.